So good afternoon. This is David Raymond with the Virginia Cyber Range and the US Cyber Range. Welcome to our weekly workshop. These are held each week, usually in person at 4 p.m. on Tuesdays. And then there's always a recording. Recordings are saved in our YouTube channel. So in the last session, I gave an introduction to VI, right? So right now we're talking about we've returned to a series on the command line, and I'll show you in a minute how to get to that course, introduction to the command line interface. And this is a continuation of a series that we started recording back in 2020. So you can find that series at our YouTube channel. You see at the bottom of the slide here, there's a playlist that is intro to the command line interface. And there are several modules already recorded, and we're continuing that series. So a couple of weeks ago, I talked about Nano, which is an easy to use terminal-based text editor. We talked a lot about why we have to be able to interact with a terminal-based text editor, not just a GUI text editor. Sometimes you don't have access to the GUI. You only have a terminal. For example, when you connect to a system via SSH, you don't have you can't use a GUI based text editor. You have to use the terminal to edit. And there's lots of similar situations where you have access to a system, but you don't have access to a graphical user interface on that system, so you have to use the terminal. So I talked about Nano a couple sessions ago. Last time I gave an introduction to the VI text editor. And I'm going to continue that session because I didn't get through the initial series of slides. And if you saw that, you saw that I skipped ahead a little bit during the slides. And that was because I want to keep these sessions relatively short, and I was already approaching our 30-minute sort of soft limit. And so I skipped ahead a couple of slides. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to go back and cover some of the stuff that I missed. And along the way, I'll sort of remind you of some of the things I talked about last time, just because, VI is a super useful text editor. Once you get the hang of it, it's one that I use all the time. It's anytime I'm editing files on Linux systems, I use VI. I don't use a GUI text editor. I don't use Nano. I use VI because it's super powerful, lots of features, but you can also sort of learn the basics and be able to do a lot of stuff with it. And the great thing about it is you almost always have access to VI. And almost any system you ever connect to, whether it's terminal only or a GUI, you can, even if it's a GUI, you can always open up a terminal window and get access to VI. So if you're a Linux user, it's the one, it's sort of, you can learn VI, and it's the only text editor you'll ever have to learn in most cases. Again, this is part of this course by Matt Vogel, who's a faculty member at Tybard Community College. If you go to the Virginia Cyber Range or the US Cyber Range course repository and search for Introduction to Command Line Interface, you'll find this course there, and you'll see we're on Module F here, right? So again, we've covered a lot of this course already, and those recorded sessions are all on our YouTube channel. Here we are in Module F, and I'm continuing Lesson 2, which is using VI Part 1. And so last time, again, very quick review of what I covered last time. We sort of gave the overview why we like to use VI, how to open it. So you just type in VI at the command line, you can start using it. You can follow VI by a file name. And if the file name exists on the system, then you're opening that file and you can edit that existing file. If the file name does not already exist, then VI will create that file as long as you add some text to it and then save the file. And this is sort of important, right? VI has these different modes. So last time I talked about basic VI mode, right? You can always press escape to get to VI mode. That's where you want to start from to get into any other mode. Then there's also insert mode. So you press the lowercase I to get into insert mode. That's where you can type text into your text file. There's replace mode. So if you are in VI mode and you do Shift R, so capital R, that will take you into replace mode. That's going to have you type over existing content in a file. I don't use replace mode that often. I generally use insert mode, and if I need to remove stuff, I'll just delete it. But you can use, obviously, again, VI is very powerful. You can use it however you want. There's also X command mode and execute command mode, X command mode. That's how you do things like write a file out or read a file. So if you recall from our last session, you do a colon to get into X command mode. So you can do colon W enter, and that's going to write your file. You can do colon Q enter, that's going to quit the VI editor. You can do colon O to open a file, then space, and then a file name. And I'll show that in a minute. I didn't show that last time, so I'll show you how to do that. And then there's also search mode, which I skipped over last time. So I'll hit search mode and show you how that works. So we talked about this already, right? When we start VI, it starts in VI mode. To get to VI mode, you hit escape. Insert mode, you hit the I, lowercase I, and you'll see insert in the lower left-hand corner. Replace mode, capital R, you'll see the word replace in the lower left-hand corner. X command mode is for writing, opening, search and replace. And you get there by typing the colon character. So shift, and then you have a colon key. It's on the right side of your keyboard, usually just fairly close to the enter key. And when you're in X command mode, you'll see that colon, then you use another letter to give whatever command you want to give. So a W to write, an O to open a file, and a Q to quit, and there are some others that we'll talk about later. The X command mode, execute command mode, you hit escape, right? And so most times when I think I'm starting with VI mode, and I'm going to either go into insert mode or execute command mode or search mode, I usually hit escape just to make sure I'm in the right mode. And we talked about that last time, right? Okay, so search mode, this is one that I skipped last time. So search mode is reached by pressing the slash character in VI mode, slash. That's the bottom next to the shift key on your keyboard. And so when you do that, a slash character will be placed in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, and then you can start typing the thing that you want to search for. So let me show you what that looks like. And I'm going to go to my terminal. And so let me exit the file. I'll sort of start from the top here, right? I'm in the same folder I was in last time. I've got a couple of files, tempfile.txt and tempfile2.txt. And so let's take a look here at tempfile2.txt. So let's say vi tempfile2.txt. And here's that file that I was hacking on last time. And so right now I'm in VI mode, right? And so I can use my cursor to move around the file when I'm in VI mode. That's one way to get around. We'll talk about other ways later in this series, but I can use the arrow keys to move around. And then if I want to insert something, I can hit the I key, and then I can, type more stuff. If I want to remove the stuff, I use backspace. And then I hit the escape key to get back into VI mode. Okay, so now if I want to search for something, again, I hit the slash key, lower right-hand corner next to the shift. I hit slash, and you see down in the right-hand or in the lower left-hand corner, I get the slash. And so now I can search on a word in my file. So if I want to immediately jump to something in the file, or if I have a long file and I need to find occurrences of a word, then I can start typing that word. And so let's say I want to get to the line 3 there, right, where it says the word line. So I can start typing in L-I, and you see as I type, it's going to go to that. It's going to find the first occurrence of that particular series of characters, and it looks like the cursor is going to that spot. The cursor really isn't going to that spot. What's happening is that part of the text is being highlighted, and that's sort of relevant, and I'll talk about why here in a minute. But so I'm typing in so I type in LINE, and here I found the word that I'm looking for, right? Line. Obviously, this file wasn't very hard to find, but if it's a long text file, this search functionality is very useful. I will mention that when you use search mode in this way, when you use slash and then search mode, you're only going to search forward in the file. So wherever the cursor is, you're going to search forward, so towards the bottom of the file. And that is sometimes can make you think that you're not finding what you're looking for, right? If you know words in a file, but if the cursor is below that word in the file and you start searching on it, you're not going to find it. You're not necessarily going to find it because you're only searching forward. And so I'll show you how to search backward here in a second. Let me first talk about this bit here, right? So I typed in line, I typed in the word I'm looking for, line. And so it looks to me like the cursor is where I want it to be, right? And so now I think, okay, well, now I want to get into, now I want to start editing. Maybe I want to type in something after the word line. So I want to get back to VI mode, right? So how do I get back to VI mode? I hit escape, and then and now look where my cursor is. You know, if I go to insert mode to start inserting something after that word line, I hit insert, and now I'm typing, and look where the inserted text is, right? It's up at the top where my cursor was when I first went into search mode. So that is, you know, I recall encountering this and feeling like this was a little bit confusing. You know, it looked to me like I got to where I wanted to be. So there's the word line. Okay, I want to insert after that word, so I hit escape and then I hit insert. Well, my cursor didn't actually go there. The text editor was just highlighting that thing that I was looking for, right? So then, so let me go back to VI mode. So the obvious question here is, then how do I get the cursor to where I want it to be? How do I get it after that word line? And so here's how you do it. You hit slash again to get into search mode. I'm going to type in the word line just like I did before. Now to get the cursor there, I have to hit enter. And now enter is going to take me, you see now the cursor is where you know, it's at the beginning of that thing that I was searching for. And so now I can go into insert mode and start adding stuff, right? So again, when I'm searching for something, in order to move my cursor to where that thing is that I'm looking for, I have to hit enter. So I'm in VI mode, I hit escape, make sure I'm in VI mode, I hit slash, line, enter, now I'm where I want to be. And so now I can hit I for insert and start typing. So here's one more thing about search mode that I'm gonna mention. Here I'm again, I'm hitting escape, make sure I'm in VI mode, I hit slash, I type in line. Okay, so now I've got line, and if I go past that, like if I hit an S, lines, now nothing is highlighted anymore, right? And so if I hit enter here, what's the expected behavior? What's the expected behavior? The expected behavior is, I don't know what you expect. What I expect, because I know how this works, what I expect is that my cursor not to move. It's going to stay up at the top of the file, right? Because I'm not going to go to that word line because I'm not searching for line anymore. Now I'm searching for lines. So if I hit enter, I get a message at the bottom that says pattern not found, lines, and my cursor stays where it is up at the top. Okay, so now let me do another thing. I'm down here, you know, at the close to the bottom of the file, and let me search for the word here. I should find it easily in this simple file, right? So here, first I hit escape, make sure I'm in VI mode. I hit slash, and I type in here, and I found it, which is not exactly what I expected, but what it did was it wrapped around, right? It went back up to the top of the file, and it so I'm going to type in here again here. So what it did was it went back up to the top of the file, right? So it searches downwards. It's going to search downwards. So it wrapped. So if I'm down here towards the top of the file and I hit slash here, it's not going to find the closest one. It's going to find the one that is, it's going to go back up to the top of the file and come down, right? So so if I'm down here and I want to find, and I want to find the immediately preceding word here, then what I would do is I hit the question, I do a question mark, which is shift slash, right? Question mark, type in here. Now it's going to search upwards. So slash searches downwards and question mark searches upwards. Okay, so hopefully that made sense. Here's another interesting thing. If I search for the word here the first time I search for something, I do slash, I type in here, I get to the first occurrence of it, right? From I get to the first occurrence after where the cursor is. So again, I'm searching downwards. And so I found the word here. Okay, now if I want to search for addition for subsequent occurrences of the word here, on this, I'm not searching for a new thing. I'm searching for the next occurrence of the word here. I can just hit slash and then enter. It's going to take me, you see the cursor went down to the next occurrence of that word, and then slash and then enter. So let's say, in this case, let's say I'm up at the top of the file and I want to find the second occurrence of the word here. What do? I type it in and then I go, and then I hit slash again and enter, and I get to where I want to be. So that's the search mode and how searches work in VI. Of course, to get from search mode back to VI mode, I hit the escape key, just like anything else. Okay, so we did some testing here. And then last time I mentioned that you can use O from execute command mode in VI. I can use the O command to open a file. I didn't actually do that again because I was a little bit pressed for time. So I'm going to do that now and show you what that looks like. So remember to open a file, or I'm sorry, remember to get to execute command mode in VI, I hit the colon key. And then I do an O to open a file. So this shows that if I want to open an existing file, I can type VI and then the file name that's going to open an existing file. I can create a new file with VI. But here I want to open an existing file, right? So this is how you do it. I hit the colon in VI to get to execute command mode. And when I do that, I'm going to see the colon in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. Then I'm going to type in O and then space and then the file name. If a file with that name does not already exist, a new file is going to be created. If a file does exist, contents will be displayed in VI. All right, so I'm going to exit. Let me do a save. Remember to save the file. I go to X command mode. So I type in the colon. So I get the colon in the bottom left-hand corner, and then I type W, and that's going to write the file. It's not S for save, it's W for write. Okay, and then I can hit colon and then Q, and that's going to quit. Okay, so now let me go to VI. Oops, VI. Let's say I'm gonna use one session and edit multiple files, or maybe I'm not. Maybe I just, I forgot to open the file. So here I am in VI. I typed in the VI. Now I want to open an existing file. Do that. First thing I do is I go to X command mode. So I hit the colon key. So shift and then the colon key. And there it is. And there's my colon in the lower left-hand corner. And I type in O. Okay, so that's open a file, space, and then the file name. Now, you'll see that, what I would like to be able to do is use tab complete to, like I do at the command line, to get the file, but you'll see that that doesn't work in VI. There's no tab complete. You have to type. Let's see what happens when I do. Yeah, so there's no tab complete, right? I have to know the file name and I have to spell it correctly. So here I'm going to type in temp file 2.txt, and when I do that, that's going to open the file, right? So again, go to VI, colon, open, and then temp file 2. Can't use tab complete. I have to type the whole file name, and I have to spell it correctly. If I were to spell something wrong, if I were to type in text file 2.txt, what happens? I don't get an error. A new file is created, right? So it says now I get this thing. It says text file 2.txt. Well, that's a new file. Now I can go into insert mode and start typing stuff, but this is sort of, not what I may have expected. So let's say, okay, that's not what I wanted. I want to quit. Okay, remember, if I make any edits to a file, even if it's a new file, if I want to quit without saving, then I have to, this tells me what I do down at the bottom, right? No write since last change, add an exclamation point to override, right? So I'm overriding this thing that's not going to let me leave VI. So I hit escape, make sure I'm in VI mode, I hit colon, quit, exclamation. Now that file is not there because I didn't write anything to it. Okay, that's opening a file. Talked about all that. I talked about saving a file. So if I here's the thing I didn't do though. I didn't start editing a file that I didn't name already and then try to save it, right? So if I were to go directly to if I were to go directly into VI and then hit insert and then start typing, right? Here is yet a third temp grid temp file. Now this file doesn't have a name, right? So if I type in :W for write, what happens? Well, it gives me an error, right? It says no file name. But, when I open VI, I just did VI without a file name, so there's no file name. Okay, now I want to say, let's say I wrote a bunch of stuff in here and I want to save it. Well, gee, how do I do that? The way I do that was depicted on that last slide, right? What I do is I do colon. I want to get into execute command mode. I want to write the file, and then here I am naming it temp file 3.txt. So now I have a new file, temp file 3.txt. Now it's been written. Now I can hit Control Q, and here I see this. Now I have another file, right? Okay, saving a file, quitting VI. I talked about quitting VI last time and this time. Hitting Shift and pressing capital ZZ will also save and quit VI. So Shift ZZ will save and quit. I don't generally do this because it's I'll show you another way to save and quit at the same time, which is a combination of existing commands, and I don't have to do this Shift ZZ thing. The problem with doing Shift ZZ is if you screw it up and you hit Control Z, as we mentioned here, if you mistakenly hit Control Z, you're going to suspend VI, and it's going to be running in the background. And if you're not a sort of experienced, if I did that, I would know it immediately. Oh crap! I suspended it and it's in the background. And how do I get back to it? Well, I use the FG command at the command line to bring it back to the foreground. Then I can do what I wanted to do. But here's how I save and quit a file all in one fell swoop. I'm going to show this. I don't think the slides mention this. We're going to talk about swap files. We're going to wrap up there. So let me talk about saving and quitting a file at the same time. So let me go into temp file 3. So here's my file. I'm going to go down here at the bottom. I'm going to hit I to insert some stuff. So now I've inserted some text. So now if I try to quit, I'm going to get this error, no write since last change, add a exclamation to override. Okay, well, what I want to do is I want to write the file and I want to quit without having to go back and forth in the X command mode twice. So what I do is I hit colon, and I hit W and then Q, right? So I can sort of stack these commands. I hit W for write the file and Q for quit. And when I do that, the file is saved. And this is that new thing I just added to it, right? So the file is saved and I quit all in one fell swoop. So again, if I'm in here and I add something, hit escape to get back to VI mode, hit colon, write, quit, enter. Now I'm back out. Okay, the last thing I'm going to hit here is swap file. So this is sort of interesting. If VI, so let's say you're, so this used to happen to me a lot in my younger days, right? I would be editing a file maybe on my whatever device, on my DOS desktop or my early Windows device, and maybe I would maybe the system would crash, right? I'd get a blue screen of death, or maybe whatever, power went out, or something happened, and I hadn't saved that file. Well, back in the old days, what would happen is your file is gone, right? Nowadays, it's better because what programs like Microsoft Word do is they save it, do auto saves along the way. So if your system crashes or Word crashes and you try to open that file again, usually you can get back to those unsaved changes, and so that makes life a little bit easier. Turns out VI does the same thing in the background. We don't even realize it. When you're working on a file, VI creates this swap file, and it's, as it mentions here, it's this temporary buffer used to hold the file until the changes are written to the disk. And if VI crashes, what you end up with is this .swp file. And the way you see that is you do an ls-a. And when you try and open a document, VI will check for the existence of a swap file and give you an error. And I'm going to show you what that looks like. Right. So here I am. Let me make sure there aren't any swap files here. No such file or directory. Okay, let's see. There's a swap file. Because I tested this before. Okay, so I'm going to do, so let me clear. I'm just doing a little cleanup here so I can show you this without being confusing. So here I am in my folder. I did the ls-al, and I see these are my 3 files that I've been editing over the last couple of days, right? So let's say I'm editing temp file 3.txt. So now I'm adding stuff to it. And I'm put some new stuff down at the bottom with 3 Fs. Okay, so now I hit escape. Now here's my file, and I think everything's good, and I'm getting ready to save it, and all of a sudden, boom, power goes out. And so what I did here was I closed that terminal. When I close that terminal, it's going to crash VI, right? And so so now let me open a new terminal, and so you can see it. And so I'm going to CD into that thing. Okay, so now if I hit ls, here I have temp file.txt, temp file 2.txt, temp file 3.txt. Okay, so well, when it crashed, I was editing temp file 3, and this can happen to you for different reasons, right? Sometimes you're editing a file in a terminal, and you forget. You might be on the desktop and you have a terminal window open. You're editing a file there using VI, and you forget, and you log out. And when you log out, that's going to close all your windows. And when you log back in, your temp file is gone because that terminal window closed and it crashed VI. That's what happens to me sometimes. And so so now I want to go back in and I want to edit this file, temp file 3, and here's what I get when there's a swap file, right? This is what I get when VI for some reason is exited without stuff properly being saved. I get this error that says we found a swap file by the name temp file 3.txt.swap, right? And it's a hidden file. You can tell because it's got this dot in front of it. So if you recall from earlier command line lessons, if it's a dot before as the first character of a file name makes that a hidden file. And so it tells me, okay, I'm the owner. It was edited 10 a.m. on May 31st. And here's this is the original file name, some more stuff about it. So it says another program may be editing the same file. So one reason you might see this is if I'm editing a file in one terminal window, and then I go to another terminal window and try to open the same file, right? So that's one of the reasons, that's one of the scenarios under which you might see this. So it gives you some warnings, right? It says another program may be editing the same file. If this is the case, be careful not to end up with 2 different instances of the same file when making changes, because if you do that, then it's going to be a mess, right? You can't, if you're editing in 2 different places, it's going to be a mess. And so one reason that this might happen is another program may be editing the same file. Another reason is an edit session for this file crashed. If this is the case, use the recover. I can do vim-r temp file through.txt. If you did this already, you can delete the swap file to avoid this message. And so here it gives me some options, right? It says if I hit O, it's going to open the file read only. That way I can just look at it and see what the changes are and decide what I want to do with it. If I hit E, it's going to edit anyway. If I hit R, it's going to recover. So that means it's going to pull the data that I added from the swap file, and I'm going to continue on. D is going to delete. Q is going to quit. A is going to abort. So maybe I want to recover, right? So it says using swap file to recover. And so now what I did was so this is the new stuff I added, right? Because I recovered that from that swap file. So now I can hit Control Q. Oh, there was a change, so I got to hit Control right and then Control Q. Now if I cat temp file 3, now there's everything. And if I do an ls-al, the swap file is still here. So if I try to open it again, I'm going to get that error again. So now I can hit delete D to delete the swap file, and the swap file is gone, right? So I recovered from the crash. I recovered the swap file, and I was able to get rid of the swap file. The other way you can get rid of the swap file is using the delete. I can use RM, and then I can put in the name of the swap file. So that's a thing that you see sometimes. If you see it, don't be concerned. It's you can sort of get around it, right? And we talked about this. So you can open the file read only. You can edit it, and that if you say edit anyway, that's gonna not have the changes that are in the swap file. If you hit recover, it's going to recover along with the changes in the swap file. If you quit, that's going to quit. And then you can delete the swap file and open again. That's going to, so if you do that, then you're not going to get the changes that you made, or you can abort. So the most common option is recover, which returns the file to the most recent version. And then here he talks about if you recover, the swap file is still in the system. So you got to delete the swap file. Okay, so if you go to this lesson in the CyberRange, there's a little lab exercise that you can do. I encourage you to do that. Here's some resources. So there's knowledge bases for the Virginia CyberRange and the US CyberRange at these links. This YouTube series is on our YouTube channel listed here. And if you ever need customer support, then here's the customer support email addresses. And with that, I'll say thanks, and we'll see you next time.